Hello, noble friends. Welcome to Science and Spirituality. Today, we resume our discussion on the secrets of the mind with Dr. Joe Dispenza. Dr. Dispenza is an American expert on the role and function of the human brain. He has authored the book Evolve Your Brain and produced several DVDs and CDs featuring his past seminars. He is well known for having appeared in the critically acclaimed 2004 American documentary, What the Bleep Do We Know? Dr. Dispenza's training and education are in the fields of neurology, neuroscience, cellular biology, memory formation, aging, and longevity. He also has a Doctor of Chiropractic degree and is an honorary member of the National Board of Chiropractic Examiners in the United States. Years ago, Dr. Dispenza experienced an accident which left him with several broken bones in his back. The grim prognosis by doctors was that he would never be able to walk again. Dr. Dispenza has always been interested in human potential. He strongly believes that the power that creates our body can also heal disease or injury. Thus, he decided not to have the back surgery his doctors recommended and instead surrendered himself to this great power. About 12 weeks later, he returned to work fully recovered. After this life-changing experience, he traveled the world studying spontaneous remission, or the sudden reversal of an illness without a medical explanation. He found that there were 4 common characteristics among these people he met who had undergone this wonderful transformation. Last week, he shared with us 2 of these traits. First, these persons all believed that there was some spiritual aspect that lived within them, and second, they all realized that it was their own negative thoughts that had caused their condition. Today, Dr. Dispenza shares more about his findings.
The third thing they had in common is that they said that they had to reinvent themselves. They had to become somebody else. They couldn't be the same person any longer. They began to change their brain just by thinking differently. And we can do that. And the neuroscience behind it says that we can change our brain whenever we learn new things, but more importantly, we can begin to rehearse mentally rehearse who we want to be. And as we do that, we force the brain to fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. And whenever we make the brain work differently, we just made a new mind. The last thing they had in common, which I found so unique, was that they had long moments where they lost track of time and space, where they were sitting down and they were creating this new ideal that when they opened their eyes, they expected it to be an hour later. They opened their eyes, they thought it was 20 minutes, and it was an hour and a half later. In other words, they became so involved in their rehearsal that time and space disappeared. And they moved from that state of survival to the state of creation. From the state of creation, we become selfless. We forget about ourselves. And on functional imagery, if you look at nuns in a reverie of prayer or Buddhist monks in meditation, the part of the brain that turns on is called the frontal lobe, and that is like the volume control of the brain. And when the frontal lobe begins to work properly, it quiets down all the other circuits in the brain so nothing else is being processed but a single-minded thought. And all of a sudden they started to experience altruistic states of compassion and joy and inspiration and goodwill. What they didn't know is that the moment they were doing that, they were reconditioning the body to a new mind. They were beginning to change the gene and activate new genetic expressions as a result of it.
And heal.
And heal.
As the result.
As a result, yes.
Scientists found very unique phenomena while conducting research regarding the meditation practice of Buddhist monks.
In the experimentation that were done on the Buddhist monks, they produced a brainwave pattern called gamma waves. And gamma waves are when you're in the zone, when you're totally connected, when you're in the flow. And the interesting thing is that when the brain is in synchrony, when all the circuits in the brain are producing the same frequency, we could say that the brain now is working more in a holistic sense. In other words, more parts are talking to other parts. The brain is in psychic union. As a result of that, that gamma wave is when those coherent signals cause circuits to begin to form and maintain new circuitry and new connections. And when the monks came out of the meditation and they tested them hours later, they were still maintaining that gamma pattern even though they were no longer in meditation, which says not only were they in bliss, but they were in a functional state of unity in which their internal order was greater than their external environment. And that's my definition of mastery, when we've maintained an internal chemical, neurological, and emotional state so well that nothing in our external world can move us from it.
When Science and Spirituality returns, we will have more from our interview with the knowledgeable Dr. Joe Dispenza. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television. Welcome back, caring viewers, to Science and Spirituality on Supreme Master Television. We are speaking with Dr. Joe Dispenza, an American research scientist and chiropractor, on the power of the mind and the miracles that can occur when we decide to change the way we think and when we practice deep concentration or meditation.
When we produce coherent patterns in the brain, synchronized coherent patterns, the immune system gets very strong. These monks didn't get sick because their system was so integrated and so orderly that disease couldn't live in their body. The signal that's traveling down the central nervous system is creating amazing order that allows the body to begin to function in wonderful ways. And mind can't change the brain because mind is the product of the brain. Mind is the brain in action. So who's changing the brain and the mind? And it's called consciousness. It's the immaterial aspect, the spiritual aspect of us that uses a brain and a body to produce different levels of mind. And only when we're truly conscious, and only when we're truly self-aware, only when we notice, can we begin to make measurable changes in our life.
When our mind changes, our lives change as well.
When I was talking about creating my day in the movie What the Bleep, what I was saying most importantly was that if I'm going to sit down and take the time to emulate the Creator, if I'm going to be like God, if I'm going to emulate the quantum field which gives life to all things, if I am going to express divinity and I'm going to be a creator, I want to know that my thoughts count. And I want to know that I, some way, made contact with this mind. So I need a sign to let me know, great mind, cosmic mind, that I've been heard by you. And I want you to bring a signal or a sign to me in my life in a way that I could least expect. Because if I could expect it, it's not new, right? I want it to be unknown, and I want it to be surprising. I want it to surprise me so that it leaves no doubt that my efforts today were heard and noticed by you. And so that I have such joy from the experience that it inspires me to want to do it again. Now, we're no longer living as victims to the environment. We're no longer allowing whatever it is out there to produce this internal chemical change, and we associate that event or reacting to how we feel. Instead, we've done something internally that's produced an effect externally, and we're going to pay attention to what we did in here that did that there. Now, our environment is no longer controlling our thinking is now controlling our environment.
Dr. Dispenza has noted that celebrated inventors and scientists throughout history have had similar characteristics in terms of the functioning of their brains.
Now, great inventors in history, or great visionaries that had genius ideas, they had the ability to function neuroplastically. They had the ability to have a neuroplastic brain, which means in the brain, the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. So they could learn something and begin to speculate and ask questions and begin to think about those answers. For example, Einstein. When he was 12 years old, he asked himself this question: if I ride my bicycle at the speed of light and I turn my headlights on, will they go on? Now, he thought about that question every single day of his life. And now, 10 years later, he's working as a clerk in a Swiss patent office, and he's watching a man fix a roof. And he's just looking out the window, and he kind of pauses and he stares. And the moment he goes blank, he understands relativity in 1 second. The vision was so clear, he had to go back to school to learn the mathematics to explain the vision that he saw. It was outside of his understanding intellectually. And when he published his papers on relativity, there were no footnotes. So where did that information come from? It came from a greater level of consciousness, not the consciousness that makes up the free will of you and I, the journeyman and the journeywoman on the progress of life, but the universal consciousness. So as he began to create the mind of the understanding of relativity, his brain became a receiver of information from the quantum field, and he tuned into that mind, and then the brain began to download the information. Because the quantum field is an information field, his brain became completely rewired to understand exactly what it was.
We close with this final, insightful thought from Dr. Dispenza.
Our purpose in life is to express God, that it's naturally within us. And when we begin to unlearn those emotional states that drive us to our lowest denominator, and we begin to reinvent a new self and recondition a new self, we go from being selfish to being selfless.
We are thankful that we had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Joe Dispenza about his remarkable research and about his extraordinary life story. We wish him much success in his further study of the role and function of the brain and the innate potential in humans for greatness. Enlightened viewers, we very much appreciate your kind companionship for this episode of Science and Spirituality. Now, please stay with us for words of wisdom following noteworthy news. May we all discover the infinite divine within.
For more details, please visit www.suprememastertv.com/is.